Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Today is Thursday. It is March the 20th. And if you live in my neighborhood, it is Garbage Day, which is not the normal garbage day. It used to be on Fridays. And what I found out from some of you is that if I tell you guys the wrong day, then you call your wives and tell them to put out the garbage. But it would be too late in my neighborhood, which made me think of something. I'm really appreciative of people that do the behind the scenes work in this nation. They go unsung. They are the heroes of our civilization. They really are. The people that are out making sure that there's gas at the gas stations, that are pumping and running these, long range trucks that are full of petroleum products. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. And pipelines, I think a victory for sort of like American sensibility, the common sense revolution that we led the week off with. I'm thankful for people that pick up our garbage, because I make a lot of it, from what I can tell. I'm in the middle of moving, and when you're doing that, you find out that there's all kinds of crap you got to throw away, and someone's got to pick it up, and they do. They did it before it even had sunlight here in Texas, and that's awesome. I'm thankful for the police officers and the fire departments and the ambulances that you hope you don't need, but when you do, you're glad they're there. I reached out yesterday and spoke to the local sheriff's department here and told them I didn't want to get swatted, so I wanted to get my name on their list so they knew who I was, and they kind of blew me off, and then they must have Googled me and looked me up and called me back up and said, let's get your wife's phone number going. Let's do that. That seems like the right answer. So thankful to all the people that make the behind the scenes things work. It really is important that we have these folks and that we're grateful for the small things, because it is what makes America one of the greatest countries. And the fact that we are not living in a tyrannical, insane, dystopian existence, which the left keeps telling us that we are, that we've got these crazy Nazis running the world. It's insane. It's sad. It's pathetic. All they got to do is look out their door and see that things are not on fire and nobody is screaming. We don't have that Kevin Bacon moment from Animal House where he's screaming all is well, despite the fact that not all is well. Basically, by and large in this country, all is well. Even when things were really kind of ugly under the Biden administration, it just hadn't really reared its head. The only look that we really got on all of this stuff happened in 2020. I saw somebody yelling about January 6th again. And it's a reason why I think it's so strange the left brings it up. They act like it was in a vacuum. They do. They are forgetting that there were 7-8 months of riotous behavior that happened all over this country. And we saw a real glimpse into behind that thin veil of civilization that we managed to maintain here. So I'm grateful that veil of civilization is there. I hope many of you are as well. If you get a moment today, just drop to a knee and thank God for that being the case, that your kids can go to school and they're not in danger of being bombed or that we don't have things falling down and burning all around us. It is a big deal. It's not a small thing to talk about that. All right, today's show, we're going to be talking about a so-called FBI whistleblower. I say so-called because he was always really weird, and we covered the story back in November of 2023, which seems like a really long time ago at this point. We're, 15 months away from that. We're going to talk about Tesla and the terrorists that are going after them, domestic terrorists, as described by the Attorney General. I'm going to tell you why I think that actually is an accurate moniker, why the left has decided to lionize these people in the exact same way that they did in 2020 when the peoples were burning down cities across America, from Portland all the way to Washington, D.C., from coast to shining coast. We had that same exact damn problem, and that's crazy. A couple of losses when it comes to the political left's attempt to go and shut down the Trump administration in the judicial system. A couple of wins for people that are in common sense. Again, pipeline victory here. And then maybe a little reflection on what the heck's going on, why people hate Elon Musk and how that works and how foolish that is and why that's such a loss if you are supposed to be the party of people that are blue collar and working and doing their damnedest to just strive to be the best Americans they can be. That's where we're going to go with today's show. So I hope you stick around. I hope you guys enjoy this. I've also got some snarky humor. You guys know it would not be the Kyle Seraphin Show if we didn't have something kind of funny. And we're actually going to come out of the gate with that right after this from my friends over at my Patriot Supply, just asking you about how you sleep at night. I've been sleeping slightly better. But real peace of mind does come from knowing your family is prepared for anything. One of the things I had to move when I went across town is a whole bunch of emergency food from My Patriot Supply, which is America's most trusted name in emergency preparedness. Why is that? Because their stuff lasts for up to 25 years. You can just stuff it underneath the closet under your stairway and keep yourself sleeping better. They offer a limited discount right now on their best-selling... Oh, I've got the wrong one. They're actually doing the 4-week emergency food kit with an extra special deal with 4 additional 72-hour food kits. These things have up to 2,000 calories per day. They're something that will last in your stock. You don't have to use it right away. But the biggest thing is they're giving you a chance to either try it out with these 72-hour food kits. I think it's really, really cool. Or you can stuff them into things like a bug out bag. You can put them somewhere where you might be able to take them in a vehicle. They can actually travel with you, and they might be a smaller option than maybe the bigger thing you're used to doing. Go to preparelikekyle.com. Again, the website is preparelikekyle.com, and that's where you'll be able to sign up and get this. There's no need for a last-minute panic. There's no need to panic about empty store shelves like we saw during COVID, like we saw during the 100 days of riots in Portland, like we saw happening all over this country. You'll know you're covered because you stocked up today. You can do it before the deal disappears, because the best time to prepare for an emergency is before the emergency happens. It's better to be a year early than one day late. Someone from Alaska told me that, and I think that's very true. So right now, check out the 4-week emergency food kit. Again, you'll get 4 free 72-hour food kits along with it. Preparelikekyle.com. Claim that thing today. Get that going. Make sure you are feeling safe. Let's dive into this wild, interesting, and hopefully a little bit amusing show today. All right, I wanted to lead off with something a little bit lighthearted, which is to say a Democrat making a wildly overblown prediction. And it might as well come from Pocahontas, the fake Indian, Elizabeth Warren herself, who used to sound like a very reasonable person only 20-something years ago. She wrote a book called The Two-Income Trap, which is decidedly not crazy. In fact, I think it is the trap that many of you might be living in. And whenever I go out there and push things like traditional family and men going to work and having a single wage household, all you get is like, oh, we couldn't afford it. The reason you can't afford it is probably because of Elizabeth Warren's analysis called the two-income trap, which is essentially an arms race of salaries, saying that you've all gone after the same thing, and now daycare is more expensive, and housing is more expensive, and groceries are more expensive, and vehicles are more expensive because there's been an upward pressure pushed on starting from the labor market and getting a second income in there. Most people assume that they need to have a spouse who works because that's what it costs to live. And that's really tough. It's the worst for children, the one person in this country that we should actually be looking after. The people that someone like Nancy Pelosi claims that she's run for office. It's all about the children. Yeah. And you know what the weirdest thing about doing that? You've also made things like education cost more because there's a weird pressure on education. It's interesting to see these people hate on the idea of getting rid of federal bloat and waste. We're going to talk about that with Doge. We're going to talk about why this hatred is geared towards Elon Musk. It's pretty incredible to me. It really is. It's like, imagine if you had an auditor going through a store and they were looking, let's say the Costco guy. Imagine the guy on the way out the door of Costco. I think this is an analogy. I'm going to work it out on the fly as we go. Okay, you're walking out the door, and the guy at Costco looks down, and one person, he's like, hey, you didn't pay for that. You can't leave. You either got to pay for it or put it back. So he's catching theft, right? He's catching actual fraud. And then he also catches that it's like, hey, they double charged you for those batteries. You only got one thing of new Duracells, and they charged you twice. So they overcharged you by $18.99. Why don't you run back to the register there and fix it? And rather than be appreciative that the person is looking for mistakes and funding that we all end up paying for in higher prices at the end of the day, because when you walk around, they go, look, it used to be $18.99, but we've double charged 2 people and we have not charged 30 people. And so people have been walking away with free batteries. Now the price of batteries is $21.99. We all have to pay more. And rather than be like, oh, well, we really appreciate that. Rather than being mad at the store for screwing up, they're mad at the guy who's catching the problem. That's crazy to me. Elizabeth Warren has warned of dire consequences if the Department of Education ends up firing all of the employees that cost us money And why would she be worried about this? Because it'll disrupt the system of student loans, the one thing that has been basically assured to put middle class, working class people attempting to be in the middle class, it puts them into debt slavery for at least a decade for most people, and maybe the term of their natural life. I had friends who told me that when they went into debt for med school, that they expected to be paying their med school debts. It was an additional mortgage payment, essentially, when you owe $500,000 or $350,000 on a student loan that will last you forever, that you cannot default on. You can't sell it off. You've consumed the thing that you wanted, and now you just have to pay on it forever, and it just stays with you. And God forbid anybody ever allow this sort of cash cow to go away. Isn't that crazy? It will hurt at resolving complaints, the senator wrote. She's very mad at Secretary Linda McMahon, and she has said that these dire consequences will be suffered by borrowers and people who are involved in the process. And of course, whenever I think of Elizabeth Warren saying things that are massively over the top, I realize that these cuts to the Department of Education are blood money.
These cuts are blood money. People will die. Let's be very clear. Senate Republicans are paying for tax cuts for the wealthy with American lives.
People need kidneys, it's sad but decreed, yet the senator's hoarding one more than she needs. I offer this bill and I hope you'll vote aye, unless of course you just want people to die. Traffic deaths have many crying with fear. Over 30,000 people are dying each year. This modest change I propose must be applied, unless of course you just want people to die. Alcohol deaths are exceeding comparisons. Black people, white people, Native Americans. We need to ban alcohol. It can't be denied, unless of course you just want people to die. Crossing the street is incredibly tough. People look left and right, but rarely look up. My bill.
It's been a while since we went back to Reason TV and Remy doing People Will Die. So I just had that in my heart today. The minute that I read dire consequences, I was like, look at this lunatic. Again, with the cuts are blood money. Again, with the people will die. Donald Trump is poised to potentially sign that order dismantling the Department of Education. That could happen today. We've been sort of predicting it for a little while now. So I hope it does happen. I hope it happens. It made me think a lot. It made me think a lot about how higher education is not a thing that people always strove for. In fact, it wasn't meant for everyone to have. We've done the same thing to costs as we've done to making women in the workplace. It used to be fairly rare. Some women would choose not to have a husband that provided for them. They would go out and work, and that's fine. Maybe they didn't have the opportunity. Maybe they never were blessed with that. Maybe that's what God put in their path. But it wasn't very common. It was far more common that women raised children, men went into the workplace. This is like a post-industrial revolution sort of experience in America, right? And then we started making this thing after World War II that everybody should go to college. And so we made it so that the GIs could go in. It's like you served your country, and now you have the opportunity to go to something that used to be only for the wealthy and the elite. The funny thing is during that time when they were trying to make this accessible, you actually had men going into factories, earning a living in manufacturing, in blue collar jobs, in low level white collar jobs, entry level, sort of to the middle class. It was a foothold. And they said that education was the only way that we were going to get everybody there. But I don't think that's really true. What we've done is we've traded a bunch of things, and we've tried to make everybody stick around in college till they are functionally and equivalently in debt, despite the fact that most people are never going to use the things that they learned in college. I rarely find myself leaning on things that I learned in college. I often find myself leaning on the things I learned in high school, which used to be the standard for which you had a basic education. We've watered it down so much that when I was teaching as a teaching assistant in the year 2004, I want to say something like that, 2004, or maybe it was 2005. It was like towards the tail end, whatever. Last 2 years I was in college, which was probably 2 years longer than I should have been. When I'm there, what I realized is that we have people that were graduating college that basically had less of an education, less of a grasp, knew less things than I did when I was an 18-year-old coming out of high school. We've watered down the grades, we've watered down the functionality of it, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that the federal government, which is the most terrible solution to almost all problems, including when it might be the only solution, has gotten involved in higher education, it's gotten involved in lower education. They have cheapened all of it. It is the reason why we keep saying homeschool. We have reached critical mass for the most inefficient system that is not serving the mission set. So God forbid we continue with a Department of Education. This has been on something that the Republicans have been talking about since Ronald Reagan. If Trump pulls this off and they actually do shut it down, it will be one of the best things that he ever did. And I'm very focused in on things about the FBI. I'm very focused in on the American justice system so that we stop having weaponized government. But man, how about we get to the core of the rot? And the rot is government poking its nose, particularly the federal government, the highest form of our government, where it has no charter or mandate. There is no interstate commerce that is related to the Department of Education. People should be able to show up and be involved in it or not, and it should actually be the cost of the free market. It is the worst thing. It's easily one of the worst, and it's one of the most new cabinet positions. DHS is another one I'm not a big fan of, for whatever it's worth, guys. I think we learned the wrong lessons out of 9/11. I think we absolutely learned the wrong lessons, and this always seemed like it was paying off people. It was a Carter administration situation that they were trying to pay off people that were loyal to them. It's never good. President Trump said he might sign the executive order on Thursday. That's today, beginning dismantling the Department of Education. The signing has been in the work for weeks. We've been talking about it just a little bit here, and it will be marked by an event in the White House in which several Republican governors, including Ron DeSantis, are expected to attend. President Trump's executive order to expand educational opportunities will empower parents, the first people that are involved, states, the next level and probably the highest level of government that should, since they run some state universities, and communities, the actual place where it belongs, at the lowest level, to take control and improve outcomes for all students. So saith a White House spokesperson called Harrison Fields in a statement yesterday. But the elimination of the department would require congressional approval, and that's not certain, so they're talking about dismantling it as well as they can. Now, when I start thinking about what should we be doing with federal dollars, I have a lot of questions about even like the most basic things. I've always wondered, where should we put our money? We should be there for mutual defense. We should be there, is there an argument for interstate roadways? Maybe so. I think the state should probably work that out. I'd rather not be a Department of Transportation. I do like Sean Duffy. I think he's great. But if he wanted to downsize and dismantle some of it, I'd be on board with that, right? How about safe standards, weights and measures? That's actually listed as something that should be handled by Congress. I'm not crazy about them creating an entire institution that's answerable to the president and doesn't have to do any rules. We always talk about the Administrative Procedures Act on this program. If you're new here, the APA is a 1946 law that happened after World War II, right? 1946. It was under Truman, and it was an expansion of FDR's hopes to communize the government. And what they did was they got lazy as members of Congress. They decided that they didn't want to do the difficult job of paying for things individually. This is the original sort of push to no longer Congress line item approving and delineating the responsibilities of the federal agencies. What they did was they said, here's what we'd like you to do. Make the water safe. Please, EPA, go do that. And when you sent that out there, then the EPA, under the Administrative Procedures Act, would hold hearings and comment, and they would go out there and decide whether or not certain things need to be enacted. And then they wrote rules that had the force of law because the force of law tied back to the 1946 APA. And that, for me, was the nexus, that was the genesis of the deep state. That is when you started getting unelected bureaucrats, people who worked inside bureaucracy, the just trust me bro experts types that said, well, we work in government, which means to me that you didn't have the best knowledge of the situation. Otherwise, you would have been working in private industry and making money off it. But we worked in government and we know what's going on. And therefore, we're going to come up with rules that have force of law. And whenever I think of the most important things the government could be doing, like I said, water safety, interstate transportation, mutual defense, space exploration, things that we got to get the whole country behind it. One of the things I think is we should obviously protect the ferrets, right? Isn't that what we should be doing? Isn't that one of the most important things? I went to NPR. This was a lead story today at NPR, which we also pay for, National Public Radio. Not clear why, but we do. The National Black-Footed Ferret Conservation Center in Carr, Colorado is at risk. They're at risk of losing heat and power because the remaining employees are trying to prepare for the animal's breeding season and they might lose money because of Doge. And I'm just like, hey, if there was ever a reason for us to have a federal government, Isn't it to keep track of and protect the National Black-Footed Ferret Conservation Center? I mean, that's a real national priority for me. Now, some of you are asking questions because I know I was. I grew up with a ferret, so I've got a little bit more insight into ferrets. But many of you are not familiar with this animal, and it's very, very important that you understand what it is. And so I got former governor of California, Arnold Schwarzenegger, to explain to you what a ferret is. I found this clip. I don't know. This is the stuff that occurs in my mind. This is why I'm having fun today. Enjoy.
What happened to your dog?
This is not a dog. This is a ferret.
What's a ferret?
Oh, that was funny.
That's a ferret.
Oh.
Totally clear, right? That's a ferret. Also, somehow someone snuck a little piece of Harry Potter in there. Yeah. No, ferrets are really cool animals. There's no doubt about it. His name was Bandit. He didn't smell very good. He was incredibly smart. He would do little problem solving. He was real mischievous. He had a funny little personality. And then my mother killed him many years ago because in Texas, if you leave them outside, they die. So rest in peace, Bandit, the ferret. I don't think the federal government needs to be involved in ferret conservation. There's just other things that we could be doing. If the state of Colorado is quite interested in, or if the people of Carr, Colorado want to put their money behind ferrets and they think people are going to visit Carr, Colorado to be able to check out the ferrets, great. Is this a federal priority? No. Is this something that NPR should be covering? Is this under their like cool little human interest? Is this their version today of like a squirrel on water skis? Maybe. I don't understand it. But I'm seeing people mad at Elon Musk, mad enough to burn down car dealerships that he is the owner of the company that is selling these cars. Why? Like, how crazy are you? Because someone's going through and saying, hey, by the way, our federal government has a lot of priorities and people are paying a lot of money and they're out of work and they're having a difficult time. They're struggling. They're unable to make it on a single income in their house. They are having a hard time meeting those student loan payments, of which there will be dire consequences if we don't continue to provide them. And then you go, right, but what about the ferrets? That's a decidedly ugly and very, I don't know, kind of like lib lefty woman kind of position, isn't it? White women voters are the people, I think, that are most upset about the federal government not going after their weird sort of virtue signaling pet projects, cutting off the genitals of children, protecting the Black-Footed Ferret Conservation Center, blah, 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 blah. And so NBC did a poll asking, hey, are you mad about government waste? And more importantly, are you mad about meritocracy? Whenever I hear the argument against DEI, and they're like, hey, do we like DEI here? And people have an opinion one way or another. What they should be saying is, do you think people should earn jobs and compensation? Should they earn access to anything based on merit, a very American concept, the idea that we're all created equal and that we are all going to have an equal footing at it? We may not all have like the same brain. That's clearly the case. You go out in the world, it's full of morons, but there's plenty of morons that are very productive. They don't have to be brilliant. I've met a lot of people that are not intellectually very savvy, and yet they have solutions to problems that I might not think of. And so I'm grateful they exist out there, and I'm willing to pay them for the skill set they might have, if it's something I do not have. I don't know what that would be, by the way. I tend to do like almost all my own work. I want to do all my own plumbing. I want to do my own construction. I want to do all of it because I just don't like other people doing my stuff. And I'm really cheap. I just want to not spend money on those things. But you know who does spend money on them? And often frivolously? Liberal white ladies. It turns out they're also okay with them spending all of your money. They're okay with taxing you so that we can keep the ferrets going, so that we can have Teslas destroyed. They don't want that research, so that we can have the area painted with George Floyd Square. We can put down all new sort of homages to what were probably terrorist groups. Here's a fun little NBC poll. It turns out there's a real stiff divide here in this country about people who hate meritocracy, and they are educated and they are white ladies. And I got to imagine most of them are probably also not married. That seems to be another thing. They destroyed all the things they said they wanted to destroy. Not the ferrets, though. Keep the ferrets. Here's NBC.
So see this. White women with at least a college degree, the only group of white voters that really kind of is on the left politically, aligned with progressive causes, democratic politics. Give you an example here. It's that DEI question, right here that we asked about in our poll. We had two big statements we read to voters. Basically, do you want to continue DEI programs or do you think they should be ended? And again, look at this divide here. White men, no degree, end it. White men with a degree, end it, they say. White women, no degree, end it, they say, by double digits. And then white women with a college degree, completely different by a nearly 40-point margin, they say, to continue DEI.
So if you're going to look for the people that are not on board the train, your dissident population right now, it's going to be exactly what you think. Now, my argument is men identifying as white liberal ladies are also probably even worse. And that's the argument that I've had with Steve Friend a couple of times. And so some of you guys have seen that as well. And then the women who sort of suck up to the guys that want to dress up in woman face, they're equally bad. I'm reading this article here and I just found it really interesting. Like they're really upset about things in the Department of Interior because that's where you're going to find the ferret preservation. And a U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service employee said that as they do DOGE, as they go through and they look for government inefficiencies, in other words, they're trying to optimize efficiencies, they said, quote, "There's no thought of how do I reduce cost and increase efficiency while ensuring that congressionally mandated things are being done. They don't care. There's no thought that the laws that were passed have any bearing on the current administration." I take this back to 1946. If Congress wanted to delineate monies specifically to protect, what is it? The black-footed, I got to look at that, the black-footed ferret, then it should have been a line item with certain amounts of money. And this goes to a bigger problem. It's a problem that I first recognized walking through a warehouse in just outside of Washington, D.C. It's in Maryland, and it's owned by the FBI. It's owned and operated by DOJ. It's a massive warehouse. And it has all these crazy things in it. It's got PPE, masks, right? Gowns, gloves. It had medical equipment, which we would use for emergency supplies in case we were going to go out and do like a SWAT hit or something, and there was some sort of an on-scene trauma. But they also had something like 7 million. I'm going to miss the number, but it was in the millions. They had millions of doses of solutions to anthrax that were all expired, by the way. And they were being kept under a DOD mandate that was put out by Congress that had been farmed over to DOJ or the FBI. Essentially, DOJ and FBI, after the anthrax scare that happened in the early 2000s, they said, we must be prepared to solve an anthrax problem. We're not going to put any money towards it. Figure it out from your budget. And what happens in government agencies is because they have certain things that they consider to be necessary functions, and then they get these congressional mandates that are not specifically funded, they do a really crappy job of maintaining them. And so they've got old, expired, which are probably just fine when it comes to the medicine part of it, but they are maintaining and warehousing millions of doses of solutions to a problem that's never manifested in the United States because Congress freaked out one time, wrote it down, said you must be ready to deal with an anthrax crisis in the United States, but we don't have a line item dollar amount that we're going to associate it with it each year. So figure it out. And what you find is, as I said, federal government, worst solution to all problems, including when they're the only one. The federal government doesn't know what to do. So they threw it on the FBI. They said, warehouse all these meds. They are in pallets, folks, boxes and pallets that are all saran wrapped up like you'd see in any other warehouse. And there's no dollars associated with it. So they just got to figure it out. And they don't figure it out. That's the best part. They don't really do it. And so they're stretching and they're just kind of cutting corners because there's more important things they need to do, like have DEI trainings and teach people about gender affinity and switch out all the posters when they change the mission statement from the FBI to deprioritize rigid and rigorous obedience to the Constitution of the United States of America, which you think would be like a really big deal, wouldn't you? I don't know. I would. I got a problem with this. I think it also goes back to this deep state problem where you're getting the wrong people in charge of things. And two, maybe most importantly, you're putting people in charge of things that they're not told how to do it. And they're not good administrators of your wealth, of your money, of America's wealth. And so the priorities get downtrodden and they just get kind of like slung along. So I'm sorry, the ferrets are going to have to go. Tough kitty. How about people that do prioritize the same kind of things you do? Our friends over at Patriot Mobile. It's patriotmobile.com/KSS. Kilo Sierra Sierra is the cheat code to get a free month of service. Just because we won an election doesn't mean that we are not in a major fight right now to restore this great nation. That is obviously the case as you guys pay attention here. And you can take a stand with our friends at Patriot Mobile. They are leading the charge as America's only Christian conservative wireless provider, offering a way to vote with your wallet, not compromising on quality or convenience of mobile service. It's not just about exceptional cell phone service. It's about a call to action to defend rights and freedoms and liberties. And with Patriot Mobile, you get outstanding nationwide coverage because they're going to operate on all three major networks. The difference is you're just not paying into a company that hates what you're about. You can get cell phone service with Patriot Mobile if you currently have cell phone service in the United States, regardless of who you currently are using. The difference is every dollar you spend is going to be supporting things like the First Amendment and the Second Amendment and the sanctity of life, veterans, first responders, things that we actually think our government ought to be spending money on. That's all okay. Switching is easy. You can keep your number. You can get rid of your number. You can upgrade either or both. They've got 100% US-based customer service, and you can call them if you like at 972-PATRIOT. Use KSS as the promo code, or go to patriotmobile.com/KSS. patriotmobile.com/KSS. Get a free month of service when you switch over today and support and defend freedom with every call and text that you make. Yeah. And here's the opposite of that. This is the market. I think those liberal white ladies are the market for articles like this, which have come out of MSNBC, of course. This is the network, MSNBC, that likes to say things that are so far out there and nutty. If you're not seeing what's on the screen because you're listening to us, this is MAGA influencers boost Nazism. I don't know. Like I said, this is Jahan Jones, who I think used to be with the Joy Reid blog, but now he's writing on his own because Joy Reid got canned. MAGA influencers boost Nazism as the Trump administration claims to target anti-Semitism. This is their thing. Flip everything up on its head. It's a great little political cartoon. It has a orangish hand, which I assume is Donald Trump, with a MAGA like Nazi banner on it. And on his cufflink, it says Project 2025. So that's kind of good.
No, it's Project 2025.
Oh, my God. Yeah, Project 2025. So they got to talk about that again, right? And it says Hitler did some good things. So this is the claim. These are not things that anybody in the Trump administration has said. But these people don't care about saying things that are accurate. They don't want to say things that are true. None of that has to do with anything. And they think the government is not what the government actually is. Imagine believing that you worked for, I don't know, let's say you worked for a company. We'll do Costco again. If you are the store manager of a Costco and you think that your job is to independently and transparently, without any access to the corporate structure, you're supposed to run your store, that you're not answerable to anyone. It makes no sense. And so all these government agencies think that they're operating on their own. They have this myth of independence. There's no independence in the government. You're funded by Congress in theory. But this idea, this APA thing, where they said, yeah, you guys know what's best. You make the right rules. They're still supposed to answer to an executive sort of vision. I say the same thing about the FBI all the time, and why we say that the deputy director, the new position Dan Bongino stepped into, is not, it's not an inconsequential position. It's the most important position. The deputy director runs the FBI. It's supposed to be someone who's been in the FBI for 20 years. That's why they changed it up. The director, everyone's like, oh, we got Kash Patel in. It's cash only. Cash is king. We're going to be solved. No. The director comes in and provides oversight, provides vision and direction in the same way Donald Trump comes in and provides vision and direction and says, these are the priorities and principles I want to operate under. And then he gets all these cabinet positions. And the cabinet positions are the ones that go out there and provide vision for the individual area. And then the bureaucrats carry it out. To think that those people are somehow independent of the people that gave them the vision and the priorities is craziness. You've got Caitlin Collins here on CNN talking to a fired FTC commissioner. And these people are all saying, look, we are transparent and we're independent and we're working on behalf of the Americans. And even though we were never elected, we had the right things. We don't trust you. We haven't trusted you for a long time because you listen to crap like this. Guaranteed. This lady is one of those white liberal voters with a college degree who sides 40+% against the Trump administration and their agenda, which the rest of the people in the voting bloc said, we don't agree with you. So get the hell out. Sorry. It happens in corporate America all the time, by the way. They go, look, we're not picking up your option. We're going a different direction. We're no longer interested in your department. You didn't fit well. Your team didn't want to work with you anymore. Adios, amigo. Severance or no severance. They had a chance to be a fork. Here she is crying about her lost job, saying that we're gonna go spill the tea. We're gonna go tell Americans what we were doing. Who cares? Do it. Yeah, we all think that they're scum.
The FTC minority commissioners can do, and what commissioners at other independent agencies can do, is bring transparency and accountability to the work of the agency. So without the voice of the minority commissioners, if you see, for example, the FTC dismiss one of our many litigations against some of the big tech CEOs who flanked the president in his inauguration, you may not have any reason to know what was going on behind the scenes or what some other explanations or counter arguments will be. And that transparency and accountability has served the FTC really well for over 100 years.
Yeah, sure it has. Sure it has. Okay, fine. So why are they crying? Why are we suddenly seeing these people come out? Why? Because they're losing. You always see people, you ever see somebody winning, complaining about the way the referee's making the calls when they're way up? No, they don't do that. They're crying foul right now because they are not winning according to the way that the game is played, which is that most people in America side with one thing. And let me just give you an example of how goofy the organizations are. This is one of those things where when I held on to this clip for a long time because I don't know how else to do it. In addition to being educated, it doesn't mean that you actually know anything. How many of you have a friend that never went to college and knows more things, reads more books than anybody else that you've dealt with? I have at least 3 friends in that category. People, they didn't go to college, or maybe they went to some college and didn't graduate. They are self-educated, autodidacts, okay? And they've gone out there and they've consumed amount of information, Goodwill Hunting style, for $1.35 in fines at the library for late fees. I had a buddy living next door to me who read a book every morning and a book every night. I kid you not. And he would come and dump historical knowledge on me. Now, I took Latin when I was in high school. I took Latin when I was in middle school. I had to study Roman culture and Greek culture. I took an American civics course. I took an entire capstone on classics when I was in college. So I spent a fair amount of time looking into this sort of, classical historical civilizations that founded the West. This guy would come at me like I knew what the hell he was talking about. He was talking about specific generals and troop movements in Hannibal's army. And I'm like, dude, I just don't know. Why did he know that stuff? Because he cared enough to educate himself. And then you got people that went to college, have the paperwork, and they think that means something, and they're the exact opposite. What we're seeing right now is some fun stuff. Like I said, FTC commissioners losing, and so they go and they cry. Here's another one. A judge just denied Doge to stop. The Doge went into what's called the U.S. Institute of Peace. It's one of these fancy buildings you have in D.C. that you're like, God, that must have cost us a lot of money. What does it do? Who freaking knows? It's appointed by people in the president. The president basically removed all the people in the board of directors there. They petitioned for an injunction. They wanted the judge to stop the actions of Donald Trump and the Trump administration. And the judge basically was like, I could do it, but it wouldn't matter because the president has the ability to appoint you. And even if he didn't go about it the right way, I'd put you back in and then they would get rid of you again. So that's interesting. It makes me think some of these judges are not trying to get impeached and that there's an energy in America right now. Everybody except the liberal white ladies with the college degrees that disagree with it that are going, yeah, our judiciary is completely out of control. There are some things that are not justiciable and they don't have a say in it. You can say whether or not the law was properly created, whether the law violates tenets inside the Constitution, whether or not the power that was delineated is in fact a power. In other words, Congress can't give a power to the president already had. The president shouldn't be able to cede. You shouldn't be able to actually cede congressional power, I don't think. They shouldn't be able to appoint somebody in another branch of government to do it. That's my take on it. But, at the end of the day, the funniest thing is reading what this judge had to say. And they're called harsh words in this article. This is a CBS News article. This is the judge speaking, a judge named Beryl Howell. I am very offended by how Doge has operated at this institution and treated American citizens trying to do a job that they were asked to do. The dispute over the Institute of Peace burst into public view earlier when Doge people attempted to gain access to the building's headquarters in Washington, D.C. The Institute said on Saturday that several Doge members arrived unannounced on Friday. Well, they work at the pleasure of the president, so who cares if the president sends someone from Doge? And they were accompanied by 2 FBI agents. What would that mean to you if 2 FBI agents in this new sort of thing, in this post-Kash Patel era? I know for a fact that there are Doge people sitting next to people that I have recommended to go and look into FBI malfeasance. The FBI and Doge are working hand in hand for things. Why would you do that? If you uncover fraud, waste, and abuse, which are in fact criminal behaviors, wouldn't you want to have someone there that could actually enforce a criminal law? And it sounds like they're doing just that. Crazy. That's why you're getting the crying. Let me play you a little clip of MSNBC. This is the, like I said, the audience only. That's the same thing as the MAGA Nazi thing. The same audience that's doing that. Their written format. They have their broadcast format. I've been holding on to this for a couple of days. They're crying because we're not putting enough money into Ukraine. I'm sure this has all this to do with whether it's U.S. aid money, whether it's Institute of Peace money, whether it is paying for Voice of America money. Right? All of these sort of propaganda and sweet little deals that are kicked back and forth between the way the government does business. They're crying about Russia being the bad guy in World War II. I want you guys who are, especially you who are educated but don't have paperwork that says it. Do you remember who the bad guys were in World War II? They don't even know anymore. They don't even know basic history. Listen to this guy who's telling you that Ukrainians are more American than Americans. That's a wild take.
The person who's watching, who just heard you say Donald Trump is not standing up for Ukraine. What do you say to the person who says, well, I don't care about Ukraine. I want Donald Trump to stand up for America. What do you say to them?
I don't know where you got that. I mean, I don't have time for it.
Yes, but we hear it. We hear it.
Here's the thing. Where did you grow up? Did you grow up in a place where you thought the Russians were the good guys? What part of America did you grow up in where they taught you the Russians were the good guys and our allies were the bad guys? That's the flip here that we need to continue to remind people. The Russians are the bad guys. They're raping women. They're killing children. They're bombing cities. The Ukrainians are the noble good guys. In some ways, they're more American than we are over the last couple of years. And we must stand with them in the same way we stood with the allies in World War II and since this country was founded. This is not just about Ukraine. This is about the core and the integrity of American values. And that's what he's also betraying. Not just Ukraine, he's betraying America.
He's betraying American values, just like the allies of World War II, which, fact check, I'm just being told, that also included Stalin and Russia, which opened up the Eastern Front, which is why the allies were able to get successful on the Western Front, because you had one of the biggest countries who lost, by the way, like 20 times the number of soldiers compared to anybody else in those allied forces. Oh, like they don't know anything? They just make a profession out of being wrong? I found this little clip of corrections that had to be issued. There's something very funny. This is 24 seconds. Each one of these clips is 24 seconds. Same exact host who had to go on at the end of a broadcast and say, by the way, we lied to you, but we're not going to call it a lie. We lied to you and said that Donald Trump was in fact claiming to be friends with Vladimir Putin. But what we really meant to say was that he was friends with the Prime Minister of India. So our bad. We'll just have to do a little quick correction. Multiple different programs from MSNBC had to go issue this correction. What we're seeing finally, probably because you don't have that FTC commissioner who's so transparent and fair, you're actually seeing people get pushed and say, listen, you're going to be sued for saying false statements about the sitting government because you cannot go and represent it as correct. It wasn't your opinion. You reported as fact something that was not factual, and that is defamatory, and it's actually really dangerous for you to make claims that are false about, let's say, Russia, which is in fact an enemy of the United States in some ways. It's definitely a national security threat. That's a fair way to say it. Maybe not a cold enemy. Anyway, here they are issuing their corrections. They're trying to imply like someone cheated them out of the right information instead of them actually like bald-faced lying.
Before we go, though, last night we reported on excerpts of an interview between the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, and an Indian TV news network, in which she said that Trump was good friends with a world leader. We said that world leader was Vladimir Putin, but the full interview shows that Gabbard was referring to Trump and Indian Prime Minister Modi.
We were just reporting on the excerpts. It's not our fault. And then the whole interview came out. Now we know that there was more to it. We just jumped the gun. Or we lied.
All right, quick note. Last night, The Last Word reported on excerpts of an interview between the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, and an Indian TV news network in which she said Trump was good friends with a world leader. Now, we said that world leader was Vladimir Putin, but the full interview was subsequently released, and it showed that Gabbard was referring to Donald Trump and the Indian Prime Minister, Narendra Modi.
Oh. Got it. Okay, so that's what was really going on. And, you just can't help it. Anyhow, we're going to move on from some of the shenanigans going on there, but it is fun to see when they get caught lying and they don't know what else to do, so they have to just own it. Let's go to some folks that'll give you an opportunity to take things in your own hands. You had a lot of lies happening in 2020, did we not, about the medical field and things that were being pushed that were not necessarily in your best interest. Nobody likes being sick. Nobody likes being lied to. One of the things you can do is kind of take that power back into your hands. You can go to twc.health/Kyle. That's the wellness company TWC.health/Kyle, TWC. There's a way you can limit one of the worst things about feeling crappy, which is having to go run errands and get yourself some medications. They were medications that you were told you couldn't take. And if you guys want to have those on hand, if you want to keep them in your own household, you want to prepare so you don't have to repair, you can get the emergency medical kit from TWC.health/KYLE, up to 8 prescription medications. Life-saving, unless you have some allergies to them, they're going to give you this kit. It's got ivermectin, a generic Z-Pack, which is the azithromycin. They've got amoxicillin, broad-spectrum options that you can go and solve basic problems that regular people have experienced all the time. It is one of the great things about our modern society that we have access to modern medications, and some of them can really do some great things, especially if you get to make your own call there. They've got a guidebook that comes along with it, so you know what the indications and contraindications, you can understand how to use them. It takes about 2 minutes after you finish the checkout, and you're going to go ahead and get an intake form. You're going to give them your quick medical history, and then they will ship them off to you. Each kit is intended for one person. If you want to check out the contagion emergency kit, that will give you ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, the Z-Pack. It also gives you a generic Tamiflu, and it gives you a nebulizer if you've got airway issues. Things that you can take control of, your own health. You might as well check them out at twc.health/Kyle, twc.health/Kyle. There's a link in the show description. Very easy. You're going to save like up to $40 depending on what kit you guys want to check into. It's something we have in the medicine cabinet here. I like to be in charge of my own stuff. I don't like asking doctors for permission. I don't like asking anybody for permission. So consider doing that on your own here. All right, let's keep pressing forward. How about some more news? We're going to end up going a little bit long today because there's a lot of stuff going on. Greenpeace. Oh, Greenpeace. They're getting hit with a lawsuit, and a jury just sided with the people who were making the pipelines. I told you we would get to some pipelines. This is going to relate to some of the Tesla stuff. Common sense coming back. A jury saying that Greenpeace owes hundreds of millions of dollars for protesting, aka disrupting the Dakota pipeline. Now, this stuff all starts all the way back, end of first Trump term, beginning of Biden term. I used to see these protests when I was working in Washington, D.C. They'd walk around and do like these like water dragons from China and some other crazy crap. You'd have people that were doing Native American chants or Indian nonsense when they were just a bunch of white liberal ladies with like face paints on. They were doing cosplay. They would just march around and do protests. And you know what? You can do protests in Washington, D.C. They'll actually let you without a permit. As long as you're on the political left, you can go block people trying to get to work. And they don't do anything about it. But if you go out there and try to shut down people that are running around on big earth movers, and you stop people who have lawful access to property, and you're trespassing, you might find yourself on the wrong side of the law. And it turns out, if you're Greenpeace, a massive organization that was doing the apparently the coordination of these protests, you might find yourself liable for hundreds of millions of dollars because it costs a lot of money to put a bunch of people out there to work. This is yet another example of people that don't have any sense. They don't even, like, did any of those people get there on a bicycle or by foot from wherever they came from? Are any of them wearing clothing that doesn't have any origins, that was not transported using petroleum products? These are people that live in the world, but they are just unburdened by what exists in the world. It's the stupidest thing you've ever seen. If it gets cold, are those people wearing North Face jackets that are made almost exclusively from petroleum products? Of course they are. So a judge and a jury is looking at it going like, hey, we live in this world and like you need gas and shut the hell up and you're making things more expensive, you idiots. Maybe you can afford it, but regular people can't. Like the regular guy, the blue collar dude wearing the helmet that's in one of these big earth movers. And they're saying the dumbest things. They used to say, they would have all these protests saying, water is life. Ugh. You've got Greenpeace saying, I think Energy Transfer, which is the organization, the company that was building the Dakota Access Pipeline, says, I think Energy Transfer, this is probably true of many big oil companies, is trying to send a message to other organizations that if you try to hold power to account, they will silence you and they will bankrupt you. No, a-holes. What they're saying is don't break the law. What is that? I think it's Liar Liar, isn't it? Where Jim Carrey is the attorney and he can't lie and he gets the phone call and they're like, do you have any advice for my client? And he's like, he knocked over another gas station or something like that. And he's like, stop breaking the law, a-hole. Stop breaking the law. That's going to segue really nicely into the domestic terrorism talk we're going to have right now. Before we do that, let's do another little FBI story. This is a couple little quick like hits. I'm not actually going to major in Jonathan Buma. I'm actually going to take that over to locals today. So today I'm going to have a locals article post. We're going to actually talk about it much more thoroughly. And I'm going to give you the 7-minute interview that he released. There's a so-called FBI whistleblower that was, anyway, he was just arrested trying to flee the country. We'll touch on it briefly here. This is an article that came from ABC News. This is a highly unusual action. The White House has decided to halt FBI background checks for all their senior staff and shift them, not from the FBI doing them, but they're going to have the Pentagon do it. Now, if you've ever worked with a security clearance, this is actually worth understanding. If you've never worked in the federal government, then you don't know this. But if you hold a security clearance, somebody holds your clearance for you. They do the investigation. They have their own background investigators, and they hold it. The FBI does a bunch of them. OPM, the Office of Personnel Management, holds a bunch of them for especially stuff like public trust. Secret and top secret oftentimes will go to different agencies. CIA tends to hold their own. The DOD, Department of Defense, holds their own, so the Pentagon, and the FBI holds their own. And so various different companies within the federal government, these agencies within the federal government, will do the same process, but they do it their way. The CIA way is a lot more aggressive when it comes to like foreign intelligence. The way that the FBI works is not more about like, it's more about like financials and whether you could be compromised here. They care less about foreign travel. There's focuses depending on what you're going to be doing for that agency. Okay. And they all have basically the same process. They all use the same form. It's a standard form 86. And that form is like you list all the things and they send the background investigators. They all do their own version of a polygraph. And I've had friends who have been polygraphed for the DEA, who have been polygraphed for the ATF, who have been polygraphed for the FBI, for the CIA, and for DOD. And when you see them, they're all just a little bit different. Okay. The NSA, same thing. They all have a slightly different focus. They're done by different people. And so the fun game is, who is going to do the background investigation? And can you trust them right now? And the Trump administration, and I'm not going to tell you that they took the suspendables advice, but we gave it. We, being me and George Hill, Steve Friend, Garrett O'Boyle, Marcus Allen, we've made the advice to the folks that are working in the FBI, and it sounds like they heeded somebody's advice, maybe ours, maybe others, that said you should not let the FBI, who has been quietly talking, per our sources, quietly talking about trying to hold up Trump appointments by not giving them security clearances. Now, the White House has the ability to do what's called an interim clearance. They can grant it like today, right now. It's like, we need to get Seraphin a clearance. He's read in, the end. That's it. Then they go and do the background investigation and they fully adjudicate the clearance and they hold it out. And that can be done by any number of agencies. And what they're doing in an unusual move, there used to be these squads that were called the SPIN squad. I can't remember what it stands for, but SPIN. And they would do the special purpose investigation, whatever, nonsense. SPIN. The SPIN squads were the guys at Washington field office where I used to work. They were mostly people that were on the edge of retirement or they were in the penalty box and they couldn't do testimonies, but they could go out and ask questions. And they would do like 2 interviews a day. Seriously, that's what they would do. They would drive to somebody, do an interview, write it up, drive back. Then they would go drive and do another one. And that was their entire day. And they got paid like $175,000 a year to do that. I shit you not. That is a real job in the FBI. Gun, badge, criminal investigator, doing 2 interviews a day, taking your time. And they have no hurry. They work in the government. So they decided they're going to move it over to DOD, where the people in the background personnel might have a little bit more of an imminence. They might have a little bit more understanding. And they're not the FBI, which has been going after Donald Trump for the last like 8 to 10 years. That's not dumb. There's nothing dumb about that. That's actually smart. Now, ABC News is really upset about it. So for whatever it's worth, highly unusual, but also necessary in these times. So that's pretty cool. I'm glad they're doing it. I really am. There's another little piece, and this is the story. We're going to touch on the November 2023 story. Like I said, we'll do this, but I'm not going to spend like a year on it. FBI raids the home of Jonathan BUMA. He's this kind of odd guy who did this very produced sit-down interview. You'll notice that they cover whistleblowers when they're not me. They cover whistleblowers when they're not Garrett O'Boyle. They cover whistleblowers when they're not Steve Friend, when they're not George Hill. I've never seen ABC ever reach out for an interview. The only thing that you can find as far as interviews go by mainstream press, the legacy types, is NBC sat down and wanted to talk to me. And that's only after Donald Trump was elected and Kash Patel was being nominated. They didn't care about my whistleblowing disclosures, of which I was also interested in people who were on the political left because it was never, ever about politics. This guy inherently had a story that was about politics. I'm taking this from Yahoo News, but it's taken out of a news service. Looks like it was updated from somebody else. November 14, 2023. We covered the story at the time. So if you're a longtime listener here, you have heard this guy's story. He's weird and his presentation is weird. And the fact that he's walking around showing off his badge and his gun, weird, not appropriate and outside of the media policy for the FBI. The only time I started doing interviews when I was a quote unquote FBI agent is when they already removed me from the office and told me I was never going to come back. I already knew I wasn't going to be another FBI. I wasn't going to get like cleared of these bullshit charges that they came after me because they made them up in the first place. I was like, all right, I only have one choice. This guy, very strange. Okay. Orange County, the RA, FBI agents out there from the Los Angeles field office went and raided his home. This is going back to November of 23. He told Congress that the Bureau forced him to stop investigating Rudy Giuliani, whatever the hell you think about that. But the case that they were actually running was him suspected of handling or mishandling, rather, classified documentation. His attorney denied that. They had a search warrant. They went and got his phones. They got his stuff. They claimed that they had property seats for classified material and possibly classified material, sensitive information. You can also be held for mishandling documents that you have a public trust position on. Whether or not they are classified, they can still be considered national defense. Go see the Donald Trump prosecutions and the stuff they were doing at Mar-a-Lago. All of that stuff is all there. And this guy wasn't the president. He was an FBI agent. Apparently, the story goes, because here's the news story. The news story, there he is right there from his interview where he's wearing his cool guy shades. He accused the Trump administration of political bias, but anybody who's been paying attention to the FBI knows that there was, in fact, no political bias in favor of Donald Trump at the FBI. They were targeting the guy for a decade. This is why the Pentagon is the ones that are doing their security clearances. This is a March 19th, so yesterday's story. FBI agent who accused Trump administration of political bias charged with unlawful disclosures, aka disclosing confidential information, aka he printed off and shared a bunch of text messages, internal documents, sensitive information with his associates as part of a book he was writing, and then he was also skipping the country. He was caught flying out of New York. He lives in California and apparently was leaving the United States, and they decided that he was doing probably a UFAP, that he was doing unlawful flight to avoid prosecution. So they went and they grabbed him. Beginning in October of 2023, he printed approximately 130 different files. That doesn't say how many pages, but the actual files from the FBI's internal network. The odds are these are off a thing called BUNet, which is the secret classified enclave. Some of which were clearly marked with warnings, made clear that the information was to be protected, according to the charging documents that were filed back then. He also printed 9 text file documents. This is one way that you get around it. Hillary Clinton was good at doing this on the servers. What you do is you take a copy and paste out of a classified document, then you remove the portion markings and any classification markings, you put it into a text document, you print that out so that you can take all the sensitive information, but it's not marked sensitive. It's still sensitive because it has nothing to do with whether it's marked classified or not, as Jim Comey accurately stated, and then didn't prosecute. What it does is it allows you to strip these things off, and then you can claim that you don't know. The problem is that he would have known. It's actually part of a training that happens annually for every FBI agent and anybody with a security clearance, and that is called proper handling of classified documents. It's straight up the name of the training. I've taken it 7 times. I took it at the academy and 6 years in a row after that. And I would have had to take it one more time. I might have taken it actually 7 times or 8 times, actually. Anyhow, it happens. He was an FBI agent for 15 years, so he would have taken it. I'm going to show you the quick video. This is actually up on my social media. It's one of the head things on my timeline. So you guys will get a taste of who he was. I'll put it over on Locals because I think that's where it belongs. This is a long form, like 7 minutes sit down, highly produced. It's got atmospheric music and very weird. So we're not going to live here on this one, but I do want to play it out for you so you get an idea. If you've never heard this, you'll go, oh, yeah, I remember that guy.
I didn't want to be a whistleblower. I wanted nothing to do with it. I was at my wit's end. I saw important intelligence reporting being suppressed. I started to experience what I believe to be discrimination, character assassination, really. My name is Jonathan BUMA, and I'm a FBI special agent.
Everything about this whole setup, the music, the way it's
presented. When I went and presented to the assistant director in charge over at Los Angeles
he's
field
sitting
office,
in some sort of field office.
He was very interested
office overlooking
in
the Capitol.
The allegations
That's a hotel
concerning
room, right?
Potentially implicating the Bidens and involved in business deals with Burisma, a company that was involved in.
There's something wrong with this guy, and I don't know what the thing is, but every time I saw him, I was like, this guy's not right. He believes in his own hype. He thinks he's a secret agent. He was working like bad sources. The information that he had was unsubstantiated. That was pretty clear in his own like sort of whistleblower disclosures. You'll notice they use the term whistleblower, and it's not in air quotes, so I'll have to use the air quotes because ABC 100% is behind what he's about, even though it doesn't make any sense. Just saying. That's problematic for me. I don't like it. And then you've got stories like this. Thank God for Carrie Pickett, who's over at the Washington Times. Some of you guys have a hard time seeing the articles. I'll post this article as a archived file, so you'll find that over on KyleSeraphin.com as well today. This is FBI whistleblower punished by the Biden regime, gets a new chance for justice in the Trump era. Carrie Pickett, again, carrying the banner of the suspendables, specifically my friend Garrett O'Boyle. My friend Garrett O'Boyle was removed from the FBI in the middle of a move/promotion to the Washington, D.C. area for something he didn't do. And let me be incredibly clear about why I know that. Because the thing they removed him for was an interview done with James O'Keefe in March of 2022. Garrett O'Boyle was removed from the FBI for an interview that he did not give because I gave that interview. I flew to Washington, D.C. in May of 2022. I spoke with James O'Keefe, hidden behind a shield so they could shield my voice, which, by the way, the FBI found out within an hour of evaluating the video. I told them the problems that were going on within the FBI, specifically that they were ignoring First Amendment protected activities. They were not treating Project Veritas in the Southern District of New York as a media organization. They were arguing, in fact, that nobody would consider them media. Meanwhile, the FBI actually had in writing that they consider them to be a media organization. This is going to be another story that comes back up again. It circles back around because this is an ongoing problem. We just found out yesterday through folks over at InfoWars that InfoWars was targeted as a white supremacist organization by the Boston field office. More on that to come. I'm going to sit down with the guys at InfoWars on Sunday. I think I'm going to drive down there and sit with Chase. Chase Geiser wanted me to come on and talk with him about it. The fact of the matter is that they have been adjudicating and determining that some organizations are not media enough and therefore do not warrant First Amendment protections. This is crap. That's the reason why I sat down and did this interview. But Garrett had nothing to do with the interview. He accessed the file. He brought it to Congress as is legally protected under 5 U.S.C. 7211. He didn't share anything that was sensitive, anything that was like what BUMA just did, which is illegal. He didn't hold on to it for personal gain to write a flippin' book. What he did was give it to Congress. And I was in the chain of people that was helping it get to Congress because I was already a conduit to members of Jim Jordan's committee. And then I decided unilaterally that this was a problem, that I had gotten it not as a matter of my work product, but actually was something that I knew was a violation both of law because they were doing perjury. They were lying under oath in court filings. And also you had an organization, Project Veritas, and a guy, James O'Keefe specifically, who I'm not a huge fan of. I don't like James O'Keefe, but he has the same First Amendment rights that all of you do, whether I agree with you or not, whether I think that you're a sexual deviant or not, whether I think the things you do with your free time is a good use of it or not. It's irrelevant because you're an American. And so I went and did this interview. And for once, we can actually see justice done. It is incredibly important that Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, regardless of any personal thoughts about it, fix this problem with myself, with Garrett O'Boyle, with Steve Friend, with Marcus Allen. They should clear the name of George Hill and anybody else that's been impugned by calling out the FBI for doing things that were wrong and illegal. And getting rid of this man's security clearance is the first step. So Carrie Pickett carries this torch. She continues to do it. She writes behind a paywall, which is not ideal for all of you. But that being said, I will, in fact, put it in an archive format so you can read this story. I also want you guys to know, Carrie Pickett is the reason why I did the first interview that I ever did with Dan Bongino. And I will give her credit every time. I don't know that we've ever talked about it here on this program, but I'm going to tell you right now. I got a phone call from Carrie Pickett because I was sharing information with the media, because that was the business I decided to get into when we lost the house. We knew that we were going to be basically losing all of the comforts of our normal life. We were going to be moving on. I said, okay, here's what has to happen. I'm going to get loud. And she called me up and she said, my friend Dan Bongino made a plea to you because he doesn't know who you are, but I do, that you gave that interview to Project Veritas. And he said, whoever you are, my microphone is available to you. Again, that was in May. It was June, July, August, September. We sold the house and I flew out there and ended up leaving the closing table from getting rid of our home and my family becoming functionally homeless. We went out and I sat down and talked to Dan Bongino right from that. Carrie Pickett was the one who started that train rolling, who got me in touch with producer Guy. She does a great job. She works for a smaller paper and doesn't get the credit for it. She is out there hunting down the stories. So we're eternally grateful, me and the guys, that she continues to push this forward. And this is an important article that's going to be part of it. Okay. I'm going to play you a clip from Pam Bondi. I'm not real crazy about her running out there and doing more freaking Fox News hits. But this one actually says something quite important, and we're going to go a little bit long talking about terrorism, what it is, what it's not, and here's a little bit of it. She's calling the people that are attacking Tesla dealerships terrorists, and I want to be real specific about that. And of course, the political left, including those white ladies with the college degrees, and even the black ladies with the college degrees, are going to fight against it. So here we go.
All right, I want to ask you about these attacks on Tesla taking place across the country. You've recently said that they are acts of domestic terrorism.
Yes.
Obviously, in bringing up the concept of domestic terrorism, I would think that opens up your department and the FBI into investigating who is funding these attacks. Are they organized? What can you tell us about all of this, which which many are seeing on their screen right now at Tesla dealerships, and it's taking place all over the country.
These attacks are taking place throughout our country. We have charged multiple people. Get ready, more coming. One we charged in Oregon is facing 5 to 20 years in prison. We filed in Colorado. We filed in South Carolina. There are more coming. And yes, the funding is one thing we are looking at among many others. I was personally in a meeting about it this morning. We are coming after you. We believe these are organized. These are not individuals out there throughout the country doing this on their own. They're targeting Tesla owners. They're targeting Tesla dealerships. They're targeting Elon Musk, who is out there trying to save our country, and it will not be tolerated.
Great. Okay. All right. Again, I don't need you to go on Fox. Do your job. That'd be fine. This is an article coming from, what is this organization called? Something like the Verge? Yeah, The Verge says Tesla takedown protesters are planning the biggest single day of action. Let's go to what Pam Bondi just said right now. 18 U.S.C., that's the United States Code, 2331, definitions. All right. Section 5, the term domestic terrorism, very specific, means activities that, Part A, involve acts dangerous to human life that are a violation of the criminal laws of the United States or any state. Okay, they could be a federal violation or they could be a state violation. B, appeared to be intended to intimidate or coerce a civilian population, to influence government policy by intimidation or coercion, to affect the conduct of the government by mass destruction, assassination, or kidnapping, primarily occur within the territorial jurisdictions of the United States. There's more. They talk about militaries and so on. It could be an individual. It can be a group. If you are being funded to go do something that has those intended consequences, appear to be intending, and it certainly appears that they are trying to coerce or intimidate the civilian population and influence government by intimidation or coercion. If they are trying to do that, then they meet the definition of terrorism. So we don't mess around with that. And that actually should be prosecuted that way. Elon Musk, apparently there's an article that just went out in Newsweek, kind of talking about the same thing he said on Hannity. I'll let him say it in his own words, but he is apparently shocked that people hate him. I can imagine why. Because he's out there doing something. Like I said, he's the guy at Costco that's making sure that people are not stealing and that you are not getting defrauded. Why would you be mad at that guy? Why would you not be mad at the people that are defrauding you, that are taking your money and being wasteful with it? Because you've been told and you're not paying attention. Because you probably believe Russia's always the bad guy and wasn't on our team in World War II. Maybe you just don't know what the hell is going on and you're just going to be an activist. Here's Sean Hannity, who's one of the worst interviewers, unfortunately. He's going to go out there and give his opinion about what he thinks the answer is. But I do want to play it because it's got a little taste of what Elon Musk has to say in his confusion about this, which I think is reasonable.
Countries. You're working on helping the blind see and all of these other things. Is it really come down to the basic, you're aligned with President Donald Trump, who also is a friend of mine, and that you have identified well over $100 billion in waste, fraud, abuse that our federal government never should have been spending? Is that what it comes down to?
Yeah, it turns out when you take away people's, the money they're receiving fraudulently, they get very upset, and they basically want to kill me because I'm stopping their fraud, and they want to hurt Tesla because we're stopping this terrible waste and corruption in the government. And I guess they're bad people. Bad people will do bad things.
You want to know how bad they are? This is a really good example of this. I found this and I was actually kind of blown away. This is The Daily Show, which is a comedy show where a lot of people get their news, particularly people that don't know anything about finding news. We do a little bit of comedy with our news. They do a little bit of news with their comedy, except I guess their audience are like the worst people in the world who cheer for petty domestic terrorism as, like, I think even shocked the new host, who I don't know his name. Listen to this crazy stuff. You're going to hear cheering when they announce what's going on at the destruction of Tesla dealerships. This is very indicative of where we live right now.
Jim, they're taking to the streets or the parking lots.
Tonight, the FBI and ATF now investigating multiple cases of possible arson targeting Teslas and Cybertrucks.
This dramatic video shows multiple cars in flames. Police say the attacker used Molotov cocktails. It's the latest in more than a dozen instances of arson and vandalism targeting Tesla.
The same suspect shot more Teslas with a gun. Tesla Cybertrucks were set on fire in Kansas City, and earlier this month, shots fired at a Tesla dealership in Oregon. Cybertrucks on fire in Seattle.
Wow, you guys like petty acts of domestic terrorism, huh?
Yeah, cool, man. That's pretty great. You guys love this terrorist stuff. It is, in fact, looking like terrorism. Even if it's not, you're doing destruction of property. And let me be very, very clear. This is my prediction to you. This is not a factual. This is Kyle Seraphin going to project this, but I've talked to other folks as well. We have this instinct. It starts with property crime. It ends with personal violence. So this is not getting just started and going to go away unless it is met with aggressive resistance. How do I know that? Because I lived through 2020, just like you did. It started with property crime and burning things in the streets and trying to knock down pieces of art. And it ended with attempting to blow up people and burn them and light them on fire, throw Molotov cocktails at police officers, for example. You start with small acts of violence, you see what the reaction is, and then they get emboldened and they take it the next step. It's always easier to destroy something in the same way that we look at people who are torturing animals and we go, yeah, they tortured animals and then they tortured people. You start by destroying things, and then you go after people. You escalate, and I expect that will be the case. Kevin O'Leary says the right thing. It doesn't matter what you're doing. You're burning things that are not yours. You're a freaking criminal. Go to jail, and you're going to get a pushback right here. What about the protest aspect of it? This sympathetic bullshit, and there's no other way to call it, what they are doing on CNN, of all places, which is fairly, like I said, left-center. They're not as crazy as MSNBC. They're not bold-faced lying all the time. They don't say things that are true. But what about the protest aspect? There is no right to destroy other people's property, especially $100,000 investments, simply because you're just pissed off that the guy is doing something in government. Shame on CNN for airing this.
I think go back to point one. When you set a car on fire, you should go to jail. You're a criminal.
Any car,
I don't think we have to talk about it in any other context. Yeah. And all those cars have cameras in them, and those dealerships have cameras. You're beyond being stupid when you do that. You're going to go to jail, and you now have a government that just got their mandate. They can't wait to find idiots that do this. You're going to spend 5 to 20 years in prison. If they get them on terrorism, which I think is a stretch, they will have no parole, no shortened sentence. They'll rot in hell in prison for 20 years. And frankly, as far as I'm concerned, that's okay. Breaking in, shooting a car, setting on fire, nothing to do with the politics, nothing to do with Tesla. You are a criminal, and you should go
what about the broader
to
question
jail.
about the protest factor? I mean, you heard
What
Tim Walz.
protest? You're a criminal.
I'm talking about Tim Walz and his comments about the Tesla stock. He says it gives him a boost to see that stock going down.
Yeah, because he's a dummy. And they actually covered that as well. So I've got Sir Michael Singleton talking about it. You can't say it any other way. The dude is a moron because it is so short-sighted. You're rooting against the people that you think you're actually representing. You think that Tesla is just some sort of like nebulous concept and it's just Elon Musk running around producing cars by himself? No. There's the livelihood of regular Americans, those blue-collar Americans that they claim they care about, those people that are trying to pay off their damn college loans that they care about, in theory, except not in reality, because they're petty, vindictive people that are cheering for acts of domestic terrorism, as was just stated. Here is a little piece of that. Sure, Michael Singleton just calling out exactly how stupidly short-sighted it is. Keep it up, y'all. Again, it's not good for America to have this one-sided stupidity. Both political parties should be functional, so we find some sort of center ground. Instead, you're having one that is voluntarily losing the argument by picking the stupidest takes and maybe the stupidest representatives.
Look, Tim Walz is a complete moron to me. I have to be very honest, and I'm not surprised why the American people did not choose him. Nothing against the vice president. With that said, Elon Musk employs 80+ thousand Americans. Most of them are working class people. The implications of the stock, let's say this were to continue on for another year, so I'm just throwing out a hypothetical. Will the company at some point have to decrease its workplace? Most of those people, I would imagine, probably vote for Democrats, at least some of them. So now you're impacting people who likely share your worldview because you disagree with Elon Musk. Don't buy the car. Just like those guys are saying, let's protest Anheuser-Busch, et cetera. We're just not going to buy their beer. I'm okay with that. But destroying public property, there is no place for that. I agree with Kevin. Lock them up and set an example that this is not what we're going to tolerate in this country.
You do not have a right to destroy other people's things, period. The entire existence of our government at every level is meant to protect you from force and fraud. And that force means people taking things that belong to you that you have the rightful ownership of and someone trying to defraud you of that ownership. That's the only real function that our government is supposed to have. It's weights and measures. What is that about? It's about force and fraud, right? What is mutual defense about? Force and fraud. Someone cannot come into the United States and cause force. It's real simple stuff. All you got to be is a simple, rational, intelligent person. That's all we're asking the other side to be. If you'll just be simple, non-silly, rational, and stop treating everybody like they have to just agree with you because of your political party, that they're all going to be like root for the worst things. This is Wesley Hunt. He's a congressman. He's out of Texas. I was on Benny Johnson's show the other day and he led off and I came in and followed up on him. This is a real simple thing. All he's asking is stop doing this DEI crap and start looking at meritocracy like America. Just be serious people. And then we can have serious discussions. Otherwise, you guys are never going to win another election. And that's actually not great for America to not have functional opposition.
Congressman Wesley Hunt from Texas. He saw Don's appearance with Bill Maher and he said, I'm a proud husband, father of 3, combat veteran, West Point graduate, Ivy League triple degree holder, and a U.S. congressman. You know how I achieved that, Don? By being a serious, rational person.
Let's be real. How many people with those same qualifications have been fired and called DEI?
Well, first of all, according to D.L. Hughley's argument, every single black person should be a Democrat. And I think that's utterly ridiculous. You see, we have a two-party system, and you need people of all walks of life on both sides of the party, and that's what makes this system the best you could ever imagine and the best in the entire world. And the reason why I listed my qualifications is because, quite frankly, no, actually, Kamala Harris does not have my qualifications. I'm a West Point graduate. I served my country in combat as an Apache pilot. I have 3 master's degrees from Cornell University, and I'm the congressman for a white majority district that President Trump would have won by almost 20 points, and I won by 26 points because literally people are not looking at the color of my skin. They're looking at my qualifications, and our party doesn't play that game.
So if you could say something to D.L. Hughley right now, what would you say?
I was actually a big fan of his growing up, a big fan of his comedy. And I would love to actually have a conversation with him, a substantive conversation about this, because that's how we learn, that's how we grow, based on dialogue. And this whole thing started because Don Lemon made a carte blanche statement about all black people, which is utterly ridiculous. And you're saying that black people cannot choose the politics that they want to follow or choose the political party that they want to be a part of because you want to silo them into thinking that we all have to be the exact same and think alike. We are not monolithic. We all have different backgrounds. We all come from different places. My military background is my father is a colonel. My sister is a West Point graduate. My brother is a West Point graduate. I grew up in a very conservative home. The left has nothing to offer someone like me based on the way that I grew up. And
that's real simple stuff. Just be serious, people. We can have a conversation. If you guys want to be serious and join us, you can go to rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Join us live. You can be at Kyle Seraphin if you want to watch us over on X or on YouTube. I see that we have probably a record number of people watching on YouTube, so that's really cool. Thanks for it. And if you want to share the show after the fact, KyleSeraphinShow.com. You can send the link to your friends. It'll take them directly to Spotify. They get the app for free. They can download the video for free. They can watch or stream it for free. The only ads are the 3 that I read. We don't do much more than that because we want to make sure we do a lot of content. And as you guys see, we'll do 75 minutes all day long. A lot of podcasts are doing like 40 and 30. I just feel like we want to cover a bunch of stuff, and I want to do that. The last thing I was thinking of, I started off the day telling you that I'm very grateful about the time that we live in and the civility and the veil of civilization that drops over there, whether it be people who are doing hard jobs, people who are doing jobs that are thankless. And I just remembered how close we freaking came. And why we should ward off these sort of actions, why the DOJ does need to get to work and do the things they do that stop people from having property violence. Because we came this close to the legitimate, most terrifying thing, fighting our own government in our own homes. And this is a video. This guy actually looks like one of my friends. I remember this video at the time. I've held on to this for years. It says this is the year 2025. This was the future that we were looking at from 2020. Some of you guys remember how scary it got. So here's your little palate cleanse for the day.
Warning, a cough has been detected. For your safety and the safety of others, authorities have been dispatched and will be arriving at your location shortly. You will be taken to the nearest quarantine facility where you will be tested and monitored. Please remain at your location. Unauthorized movement is strongly prohibited. We're all in this together.
He loads a rifle, drinks a Yingling. He was going to have coffee, but he decides, hey, if you're coming for me over the cough, I'm coming for you too. Anyway, that's a very American thing. Probably one of the most American songs ever too, Fortunate Son. God bless all of you. I hope you have a wonderful day out there. I look forward to seeing you for Friendly Friday. If you guys are staying on the chat here on Rumble, we'll dump you into the American Radicals podcast right now. See you tomorrow morning.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.